everyone, it's Tanny Games here, and today we are doing a little bit more speculation for the Wishblossom Ranch DLC. I am super excited for the showcase on the 15th. I'm so excited to see what reveals come, but until then, I want to discuss my predictions for what I think the world of Wishblossom Ranch may be like. Now, we do have some confirmed details already, as the ranch was revealed to players in the initial trailer for the DLC. However, I do want to discuss more about the two other mystery biomes still to come, and also the crystal caverns. Now, to start with, I have created a rough map thanks to those D&D map creator websites. I did debate putting Mickey ears on this, if I'm honest, but then I was a little bit worried it would replicate the base valley a bit too much in its design. However, I do think looking at the trailer and some of the views we see, perhaps we could see our first proper circular circular island, I should say. And we would have the crystal caverns kind of at the heart and centrally to it all. In the trailer, we do see an overview shot that pans over the ranch, and to the left, we get a glimpse of this kind of snowy region. And we do see a cherry and a rocket off in the distance. And then on the right, we get glimpses of a biome which has details from Winnie the Pooh, such as the waterfall, and of course the iconic Winnie the Pooh home, his little kind of tree house. So with the way that we have those kind of displayed areas to the left and to the right, and then of course with the way the three peaks of the crystal caverns kind of join together and meet in the middle, I do wonder if these peaks kind of start from the three biomes and then connect in the middle and create this kind of circular shape map. That's kind of what I'm predicting roughly, or something in this kind of layout. Now, we can talk about possibly the easiest biome to discuss, which is going to be the kind of Winnie the Pooh one. Now, I don't know if this is going to be directly called the 100-acre wood. However, I do think it's going to be a very woodsy type biome. Now, at the end of Storybook Vale, when we were revealed our first teaser to Wishblossom Ranch, we do see Maximus exploring in some woods. And I do think this scene was meant to be representative of that biome. So I do think that's kind of the tie-in there. Just in case people thought that original teaser wasn't very tied in, I do think it is still tied in. I think that kind of woodsy backdrop is tied to this biome area, the kind of Winnie the Pooh themed one. Now, I do think the key visual point of interest here is of course going to be the kind of honey pot falls, the giant waterfall structure made from honey pots with all the flowing honey. I almost think that in this biome we could actually see golden rivers and ponds, a bit unlike the typical kind of bluish water ponds that we see. And I do think this would add quite a striking difference to this area, and comparatively to the usual woodsy green type biomes that we've had before in kind of the Wild Tangle and obviously the Forest of Valor and things like that. You know, I feel like that's going to be our contrasting difference here, just to make it stand out a little more to what we have been seeing currently. Now, we could also end up with honey being a forageable ingredient in the game. Perhaps we harvest these from the special Winnie the Pooh trees we see in the skyline. Maybe it's something we fish out of the rivers. I don't know, but I think it would be very fun to get honey in the game that way. Now, of course, for the critters, we could potentially have gophers as a cute little nod to Gopher. Or perhaps some frogs, since they do seem to feature quite often in the different Winnie the Pooh movies. So I think frogs would tie in quite nicely. Or perhaps for some different, maybe we get some bats. I mean, if I'm honest, I just want a pet bat, so I don't really have any connection or link there other than I would like a bat critter. That's what I want. I want a bat companion. If we think about the fish, maybe we could get like a red snapper. My main thinking for that is that they do appear very often in cozy games, you know, Stardew Valley. You see them in Animal Crossing and things like that. So we don't have a red snapper yet in Dreamlight Valley, so perhaps that's gonna come at some point. We could maybe see some sea urchin. I don't think we actually have sea urchin in the game. So maybe that could come. Or another thing that I did, of course, I had a bit of a Google of fish with kind of like honey in the name, and I found out about a honey gourami. And obviously that would tie into Winnie the Pooh and honey theming because it has honey in the name. And I could just imagine a honey gourami swimming in the honey rivers. I think that'd be fun. In terms of foliage, I definitely think we could see a mix of like some lush green trees to create that woodsy effect, but also some kind of like orangey yellow trees just to match the ones that's similar to Winnie the Pooh's house in game. So we do see these trees which obviously replicate the Winnie the Pooh house we have as a furniture, and they have these kind of like yellowy, orangey, red kind of like leaves. So I think again there might be some foliage just to kind of blend in and match with that a little bit. So I definitely think we're kind of looking along that kind of mix. I mean, it may even be that the Winnie the Pooh biome is split into subsections, much like how the Wild Tangle was split into different areas like the promenade and things like that. And maybe they have a area that's kind of like dense with green trees and another area that's dense with like orange foliage and things like that. They could definitely mix and match it up. Now let's talk about the third biome, which, to be honest, I think is probably the trickiest to predict because we don't see a lot of it. We basically see a giant cherry and a weird rocket shape and a bit of a snowy landscape, which there is a lot of snowy landscape around anyway because of the Alpine Ranch area. But yeah, this was a bit of a hard one, but I think my key indicator for this is the cherry and the rocket, which makes me think we're going to have some kind of inclusion of the Wreck-It Ralph universe to this DLC. I can't make a connection otherwise. Now, if anyone else can link the cherries to other villains like Hans or the Evil Queen or Cruella, because I think they're the other kind of forefront villains, feel free to let me know the connection, but I can't see it. I don't see it. So in all honesty, I am kind of thinking Wreck-It Ralph. So with that, I'm kind of predicting, you know, we're gonna get some sort of candy biome. I mean, directly in Wreck-It Ralph the movie, we have the scene where the racers drive up the giant cake mountain, which is adorned with cherry bombs. It also has the kind of like the wafer sticking out of it that they shoot out of. And I think the rocket is meant to be a visual representation of that kind of thing or something like that. I don't know. I'm kind of predicting here. So I do think this is kind of what's driving a lot of my predictions for this. Obviously, since Vanellope was added, there was a large portion of the player base that was asking for a candy biome to place her home. That was something that was very popular, especially in the early days of her inclusion. I think that kind of popularity for a candy biome has waned off just a little bit. I think there's still a lot of people out there that want it, but there was initially a lot of pushback and suggestions for this. And so that's why I think we could be getting a candy biome as well. It was something that people have asked for, especially in the early days when she was first included. So many people asked for it. And I think a candy biome would tie in well with some of the more kind of like weird characters like Alice, for instance. I think Alice would blend nicely into a candy biome with all her weird and wonderful Wonderland items. So again, just more thoughts towards that. Now obviously in terms of this biome, it could be kind of like an icing or frosted covered biome, perhaps even an ice cream type biome. which sort of leans both candy and also wintry themed, which I think would blend in with the rest of the landscape of this world. And obviously that ties in quite well with what we see in Wreck-It Ralph. You know, we see the giant ice cream mountain, so again, I think there's a real strong connection that could be made there. Another thing that I think could blend in quite well would actually be a racetrack. Now, a racetrack could also be an obstacle course for the horses that arrive into the game. We do know that there's going to be kind of some sort of obstacle setups, and we know we're going to be able to customize our biomes. They've said that as well. So I do think with all this kind of like information, this would be a fun and creative way to blend the two worlds together. You know, the racetrack could run through the biome, allowing for a sort of playful way to use the horses in this world, to use them as a stand-in for like a car kind of thing. Like, I just see the potential there. Obviously there's quite a lot of sugary treat biomes in sort of the Vanellope Sugar Rush game, which could have an influence on this biome. You know, we have the candy cane forest, there's the cotton candy clouds that we could see, the cherry top cakes, of course, I've made reference to, the kind of like sugar crystal trees. Of course, there's the iconic Diet Cola Mountain with the Mentos and the chocolate rivers as well. So like they could all be kind of like features of this area. If we are getting a kind of racetrack, we could absolutely see kind of like a rainbow road like they display in the movie. And as I said before, given that we can fully customize our biomes, making kind of like a candy obstacle course racetrack for our horsey friends, I think would be very fun and playful. We could see some fun food related additions to this biome, like frosting or sprinkles, like whether we harvest sprinkles from like a candy bush or something like that. I think might be a bit fun and playful. In terms of critters, like perhaps we tie into the mountainous biome and kind of get things like goats, or maybe we could get sort of more wintry things like little penguins or little reindeer. You know, we do have the little Sven already, so I could see some kind of version of that, little Bambis or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's just theory. It's just speculation. Now, our last area is the Crystal Caverns. Now, this is a bit interesting because the sort of posting for the game lists 3 biomes. So I'm not sure the Crystal Caverns are going to be a biome as sorts. I think it could work kind of like in different ways. So you could have them work a bit like the Vitalis mines that sort of just have the loop around it and you can mine in it. It could work like the Trials of Storybook Vale, which is a bit more maybe enclosed. Or my other thought was that it will be more like the library in The Bind, where it's this staple kind of like section that kind of centers the world that we can go in and things like that. I mean, when we have the library in The Bind, you can decorate a little bit in there, but it's not really a biome as such. It's just a section of The Bind. So I think the Crystal Caverns could work a little bit like that, being more akin to the library basically. And I'm really excited because obviously we have the 3 different colors of the Crystal Caverns that we see. So I'm very, very excited about that. Now, in terms of sort of inspiration for the looks and things like that, I mean, if they take inspiration from Atahalan, I think that's how you say it, from Frozen, you know, for the Crystal Caverns, I think that would be fun. Have this beautiful, mysterious kind of vibe. I love that scene in Frozen 2. It just like, it really resonates with me. I actually cried when I watched that for the first time because like I had goosebumps and everything. It was just such a emotional scene for me. Oh my gosh, that's silly to admit, but yeah, it did really pull on my heartstrings a bit. Now the other thing I think could be a reference, which Disney park fans and things like that, please help me with this. Please ground this in some more knowledge, because I don't have enough knowledge. But I thought it could be a parks reference, a bit like how we have Miss Tilly in A Rift in Time. She's like a key visual point, but she has no relation to the actual world and things like that. So I thought this could be inspired by like the Rainbow Caverns. Apparently this was like an indoor section of the Rainbow Mountain Railroad from Disneyland in America. Now apparently this doesn't exist. It's apparently been changed a few times from what I understand. It changed in like the first 5 years or something like that, and then it changed again till like the 70s, and then it turned into like Big Thunder Mountain. I think, obviously, as I said, parks fans correct me, I was trying to do a bit of a deep dive on it, but there is knowledge out there on it, but I don't know. There was like so much to it, and like all the footage, there's not much footage, I would say, of the original form of it, at least from my little dive on YouTube and things like that. Of course, maybe there is better sources out there for this, and things like that, I don't know. But yeah, parks nerds, people who know a bit more about that, kind of let me know. But just seeing this multicolor crystal structure we see on the outside, it could be even more multicolored in the middle, and so I don't think this is a big stretch of an influence kind of thing, that this could be inspired by these rainbow caverns which had this multicolored water. I just think visually that would be very, very fun. Of course, they could be influenced as well from the mines from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I do think that's another possibility, that had all the gems and the jewels in it. Of course, that could be a connection, but I just think like with the crystals and the rainbow colors, it just kind of made me, that's where my mind went. That's where my mind went, was to this rainbow caverns that was a part of the ride. Apparently it does still exist in a kind of like crystal, a cavern, like a multicolored cavern that you go through on Big Thunder Mountain at the very beginning of the ride. But as I said, parks isn't my area of expertise, but that was just a connection that I made, and I thought that would be kind of fun. Now, for the last topic of discussion, I want to talk about Storybook Vale and, of course, Alice and the Teapot Falls. Now, this was, of course, a new feature to the last DLC that introduced a point of interest into a pre-existing realm, a pre-existing biome. It was just like a cool, fun feature. So if Game Loft decided to replicate this for this new DLC, what could we see? Like, if we're going to see them replicate the pattern, and it's going to be for a character to come next year as like a teaser, who do we think that could be? Who could come next year? And for that, of course, I went to the tapestries. I think they're a big indicator of what's on the horizon, if I'm honest. A lot of my predictions for next year are tied to those tapestries. So that's just my initial thoughts and feelings in that regard. So I feel like we need something that's going to mesh into like a snowy or a candy biome, or also that kind of woodsy / honey kind of biome as well. So my first big one that stood out of all the options in the tapestries was actually the Cocoa Tapestry. I think the colors from that movie would work beautifully with like a candy backdrop, but then also a golden honey river and some lovely orange tones. Like, if we think about the orange petals, think how beautifully that would mesh in with those orange trees. So I do kind of see a bit of a connection there, perhaps. Perhaps we could see some iconic sort of British, I don't want to say landmarks as such, but just big points of interest, like, you know, the clock tower which houses Big Ben, perhaps a red mailbox, or I don't know, something like that. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, I'm not sure, but I was thinking that for like 101 Dalmatians or something like that. I don't know. To be honest, I have no idea, because if they go down this route, it could be anything. It could be a water fountain, a waterfall, a large landmark. The options are really limitless. So there truly could be a lot of different things that they choose to include. And of course, there could be an absolute curveball of a character that comes to the game with no kind of like basis or indicators so far. Like that could actually happen. So yeah, I do think the options are kind of limitless. I think we could just, you know, we just have to wait to be surprised. But I think that's kind of gonna roughly round up some of my initial thoughts or early predictions for the sort of upcoming world of Wishblossom Ranch, sort of the landscaping and kind of things we might see. But let me know your thoughts. Like, what kind of critters might we see? What kind of food additions might we see? What kind of biomes or landscaping are you predicting? Like, you're gonna have to let me know. You're gonna have to let me know all your thoughts in the comments. As you know, I do love a bit of prediction, a bit of speculation, so it's all in good fun. You know, whether we're wrong or we're right, it's still fun to think about and predict. Obviously it's more fun when we're right, but we aren't always right on this channel. We definitely aren't right on this channel. The amount of like I am wrong videos I've posted. But I still enjoy it. I still have so much fun with it, and I hope you guys have fun with it too. But yeah, just let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Make sure to subscribe for more Disney Dreamlight Valley news and content, and I will hopefully see you all in the next one. Bye, guys! A huge shout out to our super top members, Spread Lake and Caroline Rose. Thank you so much for the additional support on my channel. It does mean so much to me. So thank you very much.